You will not believe what happens to the girl at the end. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can continue writing stories like this one. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
The outline was ready, a roadmap for Sarah's journey. But the bare bones needed flesh, the sketched landscapes needed color. It all started with the bruise, a blossoming purple stain marring the soft skin of her upper arm. It wasn't the first, and Sarah knew with a chilling certainty it wouldn't be the last. Promises whispered during their wedding vows had become weapons, twisted and used against her. Love, she realized with a heart-wrenching pang, wasn't supposed to feel like this. The decision to leave wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, creeping realization. Each harsh word, each dismissive gesture, each physical blow chipped away at her spirit until only a sliver of hope remained. She clung to that sliver, nurturing it in secret until it grew strong enough to fuel her escape. The midnight freight was her only option. The train, a mechanical beast snorting steam and iron, seemed to mirror her own desperate energy. She clambered aboard, her heart hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the rhythmic chugging of the engine. The cold night air whipped at her face, carrying the scent of coal and freedom. Her meager belongings were bundled in a worn carpet bag. A few changes of clothes, a small photograph of her mother, and the last of her savings, painstakingly squirreled away from household expenses. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy her a chance. As the train rattled through the darkness, Sarah huddled in a corner, trying to disappear into the shadows. Fear gnawed at her, a constant companion. Fear of being caught, fear of the unknown, fear of failing. But beneath the fear, a flicker of something else ignited, hope. A tiny, fragile spark that whispered of a future where she could be safe, where she could be happy, where she could be free. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels became a lullaby, a soundtrack to her dreams of escape. Each mile carried her further away from the darkness of her past, closer to the promise of a new beginning. She closed her eyes, picturing a place where the sun shone brightly, where laughter echoed freely, where love was a gentle embrace, not a crushing weight. The vows she had spoken, once so sacred, now felt like broken glass in her mouth. She vowed to herself then, on that rumbling freight train, to never again let anyone steal her voice, to never again let anyone dim her light. This was her journey, her life, and she was determined to reclaim it. The bruises on her skin might fade, but the memory of this escape would forever be etched in her heart, a reminder of her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering will to survive. The train whistle blew, a mournful sound that echoed her pain, but also heralded the dawn of a new day. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold as the train shuddered to a halt. Sarah peered out of the grimy window, her heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. The boomtown sprawled before her, a chaotic jumble of wooden buildings and dusty streets, all under the watchful gaze of the surrounding mountains. It wasn't exactly the idyllic paradise she had imagined, but it was a start. It was a way. She stepped off the train, the gravel crunching beneath her worn boots. The air was thick with the smells of coal smoke, sawdust, and something vaguely sweet, like burnt sugar. Men in dusty overalls and women in faded calico dresses hurried past, their faces etched with the hard lines of frontier life. Sarah felt a pang of loneliness, a sharp reminder that she was utterly alone in this strange new world. She clutched her carpetbag tightly, a shield against the curious stares of the townsfolk. Where to go? What to do? She had no plan, no connections, no prospects. Just a burning desire to rebuild her life. Following the main street, she passed a general store, a blacksmith, and a row of saloons, each vying for attention with their raucous music and boisterous laughter. The sounds both frightened and intrigued her. She had never been inside a saloon before. Her life with her husband had been one of rigid rules and expectations, where such places were considered dens of sin. Her stomach rumbled, a sharp reminder that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. She spotted a small bakery, its windows displaying an array of tempting pastries. Hesitantly she entered, the aroma of fresh bread and cinnamon enveloping her in a warm embrace. The baker, a plump woman with flour dusting her apron, smiled kindly. "Mornin', dearie. What can I get for you?" Sarah pointed to a small loaf of bread. "That one, please?" As the baker wrapped the loaf, Sarah noticed a poster advertising for a seamstress. The words jumped out at her, a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. She had learned to sew from her mother, and while she wasn't a master seamstress, she was competent enough to mend clothes and perhaps even create simple garments. "Excuse me," she said to the baker, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you know anything about that job?" The baker nodded. "Old Mrs. Henderson's been looking for someone for weeks. She's a sweet old lady, but her eyesight ain't what it used to be." Sarah's heart fluttered with hope. "Do you think Do you think she'd be willing to talk to me? The baker smiled. I'm sure she would. Her shop's just down the street, next to the milliner's. Tell her Bessie sent you. Clutching her loaf of bread, Sarah thanked the baker and hurried out of the shop, her steps lighter than they had been since she left her old life behind. Mrs. Henderson's shop might be just the beginning she needed, a small step towards building a future where she could finally be safe, independent, and free. The boomtown might be rough and unforgiving, but it also offered a chance, a clean slate on which she could write her own story. With newfound determination, Sarah located Mrs. Henderson's shop, a small, quaint building overflowing with colorful fabrics and half-finished projects. Steeling her nerves, she pushed open the door, a bell tinkling merrily above her head. The interior was a riot of textures and patterns. Bolts of silk, cotton, and wool lined the walls, their vibrant hues a stark contrast to the dusty streets outside. An elderly woman with a magnifying glass perched on her nose sat hunched over a sewing machine, her nimble fingers guiding a piece of emerald green velvet. Good morning, Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm Sarah. Bessie at the bakery suggested I speak with you about the seamstress position. Mrs. Henderson looked up, her eyes twinkling behind her spectacles. Bessie, you say? That dear woman always has her finger on the pulse of this town. Come in, child, come in. Let me get a good look at you. Sarah stepped further into the shop, feeling a little like a lamb being led to slaughter. Mrs. Henderson scrutinized her with a keen eye, taking in her worn clothes and the slight tremor in her hands. You look a little worse for wear, dear, Mrs. Henderson said kindly. But I can see you have a good heart. Have you sewn before? Yes, ma'am, Sarah replied. My mother taught me. I can mend clothes, create patterns, and even sew simple dresses. Well, I'm in desperate need of someone who can see straight, Mrs. Henderson chuckled, adjusting her spectacles. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and I've been poking myself with needles more often than I care to admit. Tell you what, I'll give you a trial run. I have a dress here that needs mending. See what you can do with it. Mrs. Henderson handed Sarah a delicate silk gown with a torn hem. Sarah took it carefully, her fingers tracing the intricate embroidery. She knew this was her chance to prove herself. As she worked, Sarah felt a sense of calm settle over her. The rhythmic hum of the sewing machine, the feel of the fabric beneath her fingers. It was all so familiar and comforting. It reminded her of her mother, of a time when life was simpler and safer. Hours passed, and Sarah diligently mended the torn hem, her stitches neat and precise. When she was finished, she presented the gown to Mrs. Henderson, her heart pounding with anticipation. Mrs. Henderson examined the dress closely, her magnifying glass never leaving the fabric. Finally, she looked up, a smile spreading across her face. Well, child, she said, you've got a gift. The stitches are perfect. I'd be delighted to have you work for me. Relief washed over Sarah, so intense it almost brought her to her knees. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Henderson, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You won't regret it. I know I won't, Mrs. Henderson replied. Now, let's talk about wages. And after that, I think we both deserve a cup of tea. As Sarah sat with Mrs. Henderson, sipping tea and discussing her new job, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. This small act of kindness, this chance to rebuild her life, it meant more than words could say. The boomtown might be rough and unforgiving, but it was also a place where dreams could come true, where a young woman could escape her past and create a future filled with hope and possibility. It was also one step closer to the saloon and the piano music that drifted through the air on the evening breeze. The days that followed fell into a comforting rhythm. Sarah worked diligently at Mrs. Henderson's shop, her nimble fingers flying across fabrics of every color and texture. She mended tiers, altered hemlines, and even created a few simple dresses for the townswomen. The work was challenging but rewarding, and the steady income allowed her to rent a small room above the bakery. In the evenings, after a long day of sewing, Sarah would often find herself drawn to the sounds of music drifting from the saloon down the street. It was a cacophony of piano melodies, boisterous laughter, and clinking glasses, a world away from the quiet solitude of her room. She hesitated to enter. Saloons, in her past life, were forbidden places, symbols of everything she was taught to avoid. But the music called to her. It was a siren song promising solace and escape. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Sarah found herself standing outside the saloon, her hand hovering over the door. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open and stepped inside. The saloon was dimly lit and smoky, filled with a motley crew of cowboys, miners, and gamblers. The air was thick with the smell of whiskey and stale beer. Sarah felt a wave of anxiety wash over her, but she pressed on, drawn by the music that emanated from a piano in the corner. A man sat at the piano, his fingers dancing across the keys with effortless grace. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. His name was Miles, and he was the saloon's piano player. He was playing a slow, melancholic tune, a melody that seemed to echo Sarah's own sadness. She found herself drawn to the music, mesmerized by the way Miles's fingers coaxed such beautiful sounds from the instrument. As she stood there, unnoticed in the crowd, Miles finished the song and looked up. His eyes met Sarah's, and he gave her a warm, welcoming smile. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his voice soft and melodic. "Welcome to the Golden Nugget. Enjoying the music?" Sarah blushed, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's beautiful." "Thank you," Miles replied. "Music's my way of making the world a little brighter." "What's your name?" "Sarah," she said. "I'm Sarah." "Well, Sarah," Miles said, "it's a pleasure to meet you. Why don't you come on over and have a seat? I'll play you a song." Hesitantly, Sarah made her way to the piano and sat down at a small table nearby. Miles smiled at her and began to play again, this time a lively, upbeat tune that made her toes tap. As she listened to Miles's music, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The music seemed to wash away her worries, to lift her spirits, to remind her that there was still beauty and joy in the world. In Miles's music, she found a safe haven, a place where she could forget her troubles and simply be. It was the beginning of an unexpected friendship, a melody of hope in the heart of a dusty boomtown. It was a stark contrast to the harsh, discordant notes of her past. Night after night, Sarah found herself drawn back to the Golden Nugget. It wasn't the whiskey or the gambling that beckoned, but the music. Miles's music. Each note was a balm to her wounded spirit, a gentle hand soothing the raw edges of her trauma. He played a variety of tunes, from lively jigs that made the cowboys stomp their feet to soulful ballads that tugged at the heartstrings. But it was the quieter melodies, the ones he played just for her, that resonated the most. He seemed to sense her sadness, to understand her unspoken pain. One evening, as he played a particularly poignant piece, Sarah found tears streaming down her face. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding in, how deeply she had been hurting. Miles stopped playing and turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She shook her head, unable to speak. The tears just kept coming, a torrent of grief and fear and anger. Miles gently took her hand. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. Just let it out." And so she did. She cried, not just for the pain she had endured, but for the life she had lost, for the dreams that had been shattered. Miles sat beside her, his presence a silent comfort, his hand a steady anchor in the storm of her emotions. When the tears finally subsided, Sarah felt a sense of exhaustion, but also a sense of release. It was as if she had finally opened a valve and allowed all the pent-up emotions to flow out. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. I don't know what I would have done without you." Miles smiled gently. "I didn't do anything," he said. "You did all the work. I just provided the music." But it was more than just music, Sarah knew. It was the way he listened, the way he cared, the way he made her feel safe. He had created a space where she could be vulnerable, where she could be herself without fear of judgment or reprisal. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to heal. The nightmares became less frequent, the memories less painful. She started to laugh again, to dream again, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a happy future. Miles's music was a constant source of inspiration and comfort. Each note was a step away from her trauma, a step towards healing, a step towards reclaiming her life. The saloon, once a symbol of everything she feared, had become a sanctuary, a place where she could find solace and connection. And Miles, the gentle piano player, had become her friend, her confidant, her healer. He was showing her that melody could indeed triumph over menace, and that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope for a brighter tomorrow. He even started teaching her to play, her fingers clumsy at first, but slowly gaining confidence under his patient guidance. The piano, like her sewing, became another outlet for her creativity and a symbol of her growing independence. Their friendship blossomed slowly like a delicate flower pushing through the hard earth. After her initial emotional outpouring, Sarah was hesitant to burden Miles with her troubles. But Miles, with his gentle persistence and unwavering empathy, gradually coaxed her to open up. He shared stories of his own past, of a childhood spent traveling with his family's vaudeville act, of the hardships and joys of life on the road. He spoke of his dreams of becoming a concert pianist, dreams that had been derailed by circumstance but not extinguished. Sarah, in turn, began to share fragments of her own life, carefully choosing her words, testing the waters. She spoke of her mother, a kind and loving woman who had taught her to sew and to find beauty in the simplest things. She spoke of her dreams of having a family, dreams that had been cruelly twisted and broken. She didn't tell him everything at once. The details of her abusive marriage were still too raw, too painful to articulate. But she shared enough for Miles to understand the depth of her pain, the extent of her trauma. He listened patiently, without judgment, offering words of comfort and support. He never pried, never pressured her to reveal more than she was comfortable sharing. He simply created a safe space where she could be herself, where she could feel heard and understood. As they shared their stories, a bond of trust began to form between them. Sarah learned that Miles was more than just a piano player. He was a kind, compassionate, and deeply empathetic soul. He had a quiet strength that she admired, a resilience that inspired her. He, in turn, saw beyond Sarah's quiet demeanor and wounded spirit. He saw her strength, her resilience, her unwavering determination to rebuild her life. He saw her kindness, her compassion, her capacity for love. They found common ground in their shared love of music, their shared dreams of a better future, their shared belief in the power of hope. The Golden Nugget, once a place of fear and anxiety, became their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the harsh realities of the world and find solace in each other's company. The trust they built was like a sturdy foundation, a solid base upon which they could build their friendship. It was a safe haven, a place where they could be vulnerable, where they could be honest, where they could be themselves without fear of judgment or reprisal. And as their friendship deepened, Sarah began to realize that Miles was more than just a friend. He was becoming something more, something she hadn't dared to dream of since escaping her abusive marriage. He was becoming her hope, her inspiration, her light in the darkness. He was even starting to teach her how to harmonize, their voices blending together in simple songs, a metaphor for their growing connection. It wasn't just Miles's music that drew Sarah to him, it was his inherent kindness, a quality that shone through in every action, every word. He treated everyone with respect, from the rowdiest cowboy to the surest newcomer. He never spoke ill of others, never engaged in gossip or backbiting. He was simply, genuinely, a good person. Sarah had grown so accustomed to being devalued, dismissed, and demeaned that Miles's genuine nature was a revelation. He listened to her with patience and interest, valuing her opinions and respecting her boundaries. He never tried to control her, never tried to tell her what to do. He simply offered his support and encouragement, allowing her to make her own choices. One day, a traveling salesman came to town, peddling his wares from a horse-drawn wagon. He stopped by Mrs. Henderson's shop, hoping to sell her some new fabrics. Sarah, who was helping Mrs. Henderson with inventory, overheard the salesman trying to cheat the elderly woman, inflating the prices and downplaying the quality of the goods. Without thinking, Sarah stepped forward and confronted the salesman, pointing out his dishonesty and defending Mrs. Henderson's interests. The salesman, taken aback by her boldness, quickly packed up his wares and left, muttering under his breath. Mrs. Henderson turned to Sarah, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, dear," she said. "You have a good head on your shoulders. I don't know what I would have done without you." That evening, Sarah told Miles about the incident at the saloon. He listened intently, his expression filled with admiration. "That was very brave of you, Sarah," he said. "You stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. You have a strong sense of justice." Sarah blushed and used to such praise. "I just couldn't stand to see him taking advantage of Mrs. Henderson," she said. "She's been so kind to me." Miles smiled. "That's what I mean," he said. "You're kind and compassionate. You care about others. That's a rare and precious quality." As she looked into Miles's eyes, Sarah realized that he truly saw her not just as a wounded woman in need of help, but as a valuable human being with her own strengths and talents. For the first time in a long time, she felt valued, respected, and appreciated. It was a profound realization, a turning point in her healing journey. She began to believe in herself again, to recognize her own worth. And as she did, she began to feel safe, not just in the boomtown, but in her own skin. She knew she could trust Miles, that he would never hurt her, never betray her, never try to control her. He was a safe harbor in a stormy sea, a beacon of light in the darkness. The small acts of kindness he showed her every day, from holding the door open to sharing a piece of pie, reaffirmed his genuine nature and strengthened their bond. He even started leaving sheet music for her on the piano, little challenges to encourage her playing. These small gestures made her feel seen and cherished, solidifying her trust and affection for him. For so long, Sarah's dreams had been locked away, buried beneath layers of fear and despair. Her abusive marriage had systematically stripped her of her hopes, her ambitions, her very sense of self. She had come to believe that she was incapable of achieving anything worthwhile, that she was destined to live a life of servitude and suffering. But Miles, with his unwavering belief in her potential, had chipped away at those layers, revealing the spark of hope that still flickered within her heart. He encouraged her to pursue her passions, to explore her talents, to envision a future where she could be happy and fulfilled. One day, while browsing through Mrs. Henderson's collection of fabric scraps, Sarah had an idea. She saw a way to combine her sewing skills with her newfound love of music to create something beautiful and unique. She envisioned a line of dresses inspired by Miles's music, each garment designed to capture the essence of a particular song. She shared her idea with Miles, her voice trembling with excitement. He listened intently, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "That's a wonderful idea, Sarah," he said. "I think you could really make something special." He offered to help her, suggesting melodies and harmonies that she could incorporate into her designs. Together, they began to sketch out ideas, filling notebooks with drawings and musical notations. Sarah started small, creating a simple dress inspired by a lively jig that Miles often played at the saloon. She used bright, cheerful fabrics and incorporated playful details, like ruffles and ribbons, that echoed the rhythm of the music. When she finished the dress, she showed it to Mrs. Henderson, who was immediately impressed. "This is beautiful, Sarah," she said. "You have a real talent for design. I think you could sell these dresses in my shop." And so she did. Sarah's dresses quickly became popular with the townswomen, who were drawn to their unique designs and their cheerful spirit. She started to receive custom orders, creating dresses for weddings, dances, and other special occasions. As her business grew, Sarah began to dream bigger. She envisioned opening her own shop, a place where she could design and sell her creations, a place where she could offer other women a chance to express their individuality and their creativity. The thought of running her own business was daunting, but it was also exhilarating. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but with Miles's support and encouragement, she believed she could do it. He helped her with the business side of things, teaching her how to manage her finances, how to market her products, how to negotiate with suppliers. He even offered to play music at her shop's grand opening, drawing in customers and creating a festive atmosphere. Inspired by Miles's belief in her and fueled by her own growing confidence, Sarah dared to dream again. She dared to envision a future free from fear and abuse, a future where she could be happy, successful, and independent. The first dress she designed, inspired by Miles's music, even featured tiny embroidered musical notes along the hem, a secret tribute to her muse and her growing courage. It was a tangible symbol of her journey, a reminder that even from brokenness, beauty could be created. The line between friendship and something more began to blur as subtly as the changing light at dawn. Sarah found herself looking forward to seeing Miles each day, not just for the music or the business advice, but for the simple joy of his company. His smile made her heart flutter, his laughter made her spirit soar, and his touch, even a casual brush of his hand against hers, sent shivers down her spine. She tried to ignore these feelings, to dismiss them as gratitude or admiration. She had been hurt so badly in the past that she was afraid to open her heart again, afraid to trust that she could be loved and cherished. But the feelings persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. She found herself thinking about him constantly, replaying their conversations in her mind, imagining what it would be like to be held in his arms. Miles, too, was experiencing a shift in his feelings for Sarah. He had always admired her strength, her resilience, and her kind heart. But now he found himself drawn to her in a deeper, more profound way. He admired her determination to rebuild her life, her passion for her work, and her unwavering spirit. He found himself longing to be near her, to protect her, to make her happy. He loved the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her designs, the way her cheeks flushed when he complimented her, and the way she always managed to find the good in every situation. One evening, after a particularly successful day at the shop, Miles offered to walk Sarah home. As they strolled down the moonlit street, a comfortable silence settled between them. Suddenly, Miles stopped and turned to Sarah, his expression serious. "Sarah," he said, "I need to tell you something." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what he was going to say, and she was both terrified and exhilarated. I've developed feelings for you," Miles continued, his voice barely a whisper. "I know this might be unexpected, and I don't want to pressure you in any way. But I needed you to know." Sarah looked into his eyes, and she saw nothing but honesty and sincerity. "Miles," she said, her voice trembling, I have feelings for you too." A smile spread across Miles's face, a smile that lit up the night. He gently took her hand and pulled her closer. "May I?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. Sarah nodded, her heart overflowing with love. Miles leaned in and kissed her, a soft, tender kiss that spoke of longing and hope and a future filled with possibilities. The kiss was a spark that ignited a flame, a confirmation of the deep connection that had been building between them. As they pulled apart, they gazed at each other, their eyes filled with a love that was both unexpected and undeniable. He even started composing a special song just for her, a melody that captured the essence of their love story, a secret language shared only between them. The love blossomed in the most unexpected place, a testament to the power of kindness, music, and shared dreams. Despite the joy and hope that Miles had brought into her life, Sarah knew that she couldn't fully embrace her new love and future without confronting her past. The trauma of her abusive marriage still lingered, casting a shadow over her happiness. The nightmares, though less frequent, still haunted her sleep. The memories, though less vivid, still resurfaced at unexpected moments, triggering feelings of fear and anxiety. She had tried to bury her past, to pretend that it didn't exist, but she knew that she couldn't truly heal until she faced it head-on. She confided in Miles, sharing the details of her abusive marriage, the pain, the humiliation, the fear. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, but she knew that she couldn't keep it bottled up inside any longer. Miles listened patiently, his heart breaking for the suffering she had endured. He held her close, offering words of comfort and support. He didn't try to fix her, didn't try to tell her what to do. He simply allowed her to feel her emotions, to process her trauma, to grieve for the life she had lost. He encouraged her to seek help, to talk to someone who could provide professional guidance. He researched resources in the area, finding a support group for women who had experienced domestic violence. Sarah was hesitant at first, afraid to share her story with strangers. But Miles convinced her that it could be helpful, that it could provide her with a sense of community and understanding. She attended the support group, and it was a transformative experience. She met other women who had been through similar experiences, women who understood her pain, her fear, her shame. She realized that she wasn't alone, that she wasn't broken, that she was a survivor. The women in the support group shared their stories, their coping mechanisms, their strategies for healing. They offered each other encouragement, support, and hope. Sarah learned to forgive herself for the choices she had made, to let go of the guilt and shame that had been weighing her down. She learned to set boundaries, to assert her needs, to protect herself from future harm. With the help of Miles and the support group, Sarah began to heal from her past trauma. She learned to trust again, to love again, to believe in herself again. She realized that her past didn't define her, that she had the power to create her own future. She decided to take a bold step, to legally dissolve her marriage, to officially sever ties with her abuser. It was a difficult and emotional process, but it was also liberating. It was a symbol of her freedom, a declaration of her independence, a testament to her strength. The final decree arrived on a day that Miles had composed a particularly hopeful piece of music. It felt like a sign, a perfect harmony of closure and new beginnings. Sarah framed the document, a reminder of her resilience and her victory over her past. From that day forward, she vowed to live her life to the fullest, to embrace her new love and her new future with courage and gratitude. With her past finally behind her, Sarah was free to fully embrace her love for Miles and their shared future. They continued to support each other's dreams, encouraging each other to reach for the stars. Sarah's dress shop flourished, becoming a haven for women seeking beautiful, unique clothing and a supportive community. She hired other women who had experienced hardship, providing them with opportunities to learn new skills and rebuild their lives. Miles continued to play music at the Golden Nugget, his melodies bringing joy and solace to the townspeople. He also started teaching music lessons to children, sharing his passion and inspiring the next generation of musicians. One sunny afternoon, Miles took Sarah on a picnic to a secluded meadow in the mountains. He spread out a blanket, unpacked a basket filled with delicious food, and serenaded her with a new song he had written just for her. As he sang, Sarah listened with tears in her eyes, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. The song was a beautiful melody, a testament to their journey, their courage, their healing, and their unwavering hope. It was their wedding song, a celebration of their love and their commitment to each other. When he finished singing, Miles knelt down on one knee and took Sarah's hand. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "will you marry me?" Sarah gasped, her eyes widening with surprise and joy. "Yes, Miles," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes."